Okay, part 3 for May 14th, and I continue reading. We're now at paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, paragraph 8. The next thing I knew, the house parent came walking back out of the back door by the garbage room and started yelling at me. I told him that I did not do anything, but he did not believe me. He picked up the cardboard paper and started hitting me on the top of the head. There were all kinds of butterfly pieces going everywhere. He threw the cardboard down on the ground and told me to pick it up and put it in the garbage can inside the back room of the dormitory. And then he left. I sat there in the dirt by that big old tree for the longest time, trying to fit all the butterfly pieces back together so I could bury them whole. But it was too hard to do. So I prayed for them, and then I put them in an old, torn-up shoebox. And I buried them in the bottom of the fort that I had built in the ground, out by the large bamboos near the blackberry bushes. Every year, when the butterflies would return to the orphanage and try to land on me, I would try to shoo them away because they did not know that the orphanage was a bad place to live and a very bad place to die. All right. I hope, first of all, that you, when you received the story, that you did a silent reading and then you read along with me for fluency and to get a feeling of the tone and the rhythm that I think the author probably intended for this to be read in, so I tried my best to exhibit that for you. This is, as I said to begin with, a story that is one of great sadness. It also is one of beauty, but in a tragic kind of way. I'd like for us to kind of take it apart and just look paragraph by paragraph at meaning here. And also keeping in mind what we know about the author. We know that he's speaking from his memory. He's speaking from his heart. In some of the other stories that he wrote about his time in orphanages, he wrote of beatings, of being locked away for long periods of time, for not being fed meals as punishment for doing something that he often didn't even know that he had done wrong. So he has very vivid memories of much of what happened. And yet we know that he was a child, and sometimes our childhood memories are not exactly as we think, that they were. The orphanage that he was in is in the south, or was in the south part of Georgia, near a town called Bainbridge, but not right there, but near there. And then he moved to some other orphanages as he grew older, and that was typical. Orphanages didn't always house children of all ages. Some were just for the youngest, some for older. The first paragraph. There was a time in my life when I knew that beauty meant something special. And then he says, but that was before. The orphanage turned me into an old man. Oh my gosh. What does he mean? I would love to know what you think. I wish we could talk about this. In my mind, I think of an old man as being, in this case, someone who's not so much physically old, but who is worn out mentally. Their body and their mind particularly are very tired because the hardness of the world and the hardships of life have worn this man way down. So here we have this enormous contrast between the 6-year-old child and the old man. Huge contrast. The 6-year-old child is now like an old man. That is what we call figurative language. A simile, S-I-M-I-L-E, simile, is figurative language that uses the word like or as. So in this case, we're seeing, the young boy as an old man or like an old man. Figurative language. I wonder what other characteristics you might be adding to that idea of the old man. Sometimes in our society, we think of older people as being grouchy, maybe mean, maybe very negative. Nothing is going well. Did that orphanage do that to his spirit? Possibly so. Paragraph 2. He talks about life at the orphanage briefly. And how does it sound? What is he trying to tell us about it? He's pointing out that it is the same day after day after day. So much so that he describes himself as a soldier. So he has described himself now as an older man. He's described himself as a soldier. His life is very predictable. His life is not very child-oriented at all, is it? Straight lines, same routine day after day. Third paragraph, after breakfast one Saturday morning, I returned to my dormitory and saw the house parent chasing butterflies. Now the monarch butterflies are, you're familiar with the monarch, beautiful orange and black, and we know that they migrate. Here in the United States, they migrate from Canada, the northern states, in the winter down to Mexico, California, some into South America, and they migrate in very large numbers, and then they migrate back up in the spring. And if you're lucky enough to see a migration of the monarchs, it's an amazing thing, but it's a rare thing to actually be able to be at the right place at the right moment to spot those. like any butterflies, they are going to feed on the freshest, brightest colored flowers as they migrate. And in this case, we know that it was spring. The azaleas were blooming in Georgia. Now in Bainbridge, Georgia, because it's in the southern part of the state of Georgia, the azaleas bloom earlier than they do here. They probably start blooming in, probably early to mid-April. Ours are a little bit later, but early April would not be surprising at all. So that's kind of the time of year. And you have the contrast here between an orphanage, which is not a happy place to be, not a beautiful place to be, not a beautiful lifestyle to have, to live, the life of an orphan. We have that contrasted with these blooming bushes and these beautiful butterflies. Writers of memoir, writers of stories often use contrast, don't they, to help us to see life in its fullness, because it's not all beauty and it's not all horror. It's all of that. Life is all of those things. So I think he does a wonderful job here of setting this scene of these monarch butterflies. And the azaleas are strewn everywhere. They're all around this orphanage. I find it interesting and unusual that we have a child who whose memory captured the beauty of that, of the flowers and the butterflies. A lot of times children love and enjoy seeing a butterfly, chasing a butterfly or whatever, but children don't always take in all of that beauty and remember it. I think it's amazing that he did have that picture in his mind, that he was able to keep that picture of beauty in his mind. It reminds me of reading a book which happened to be entitled "There Are No Butterflies Here." There Are No Butterflies Here. It is a book of poems that were written by children who lived in the work camp, concentration type camp in the city of Terezin, which I believe is in the Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic. I visited there in that work camp, and I purchased the book. In fact, I should show it to you. I will have it out and show it to you when we talk next time. But it's again a heart-wrenching book. The children have drawn pictures and written poems, maybe some short stories as well. But one of the children said in a poem or something, "There aren't any butterflies here," because there were no bushes. There were very few trees. It was concrete buildings and gravel, rocks, and no beauty, so there were no butterflies. In Roger's case, there were butterflies. There was beauty. And then he goes into what happened. He says he was carefully watching the house parent catch these butterflies. And then when he caught them, It wasn't like Roger was familiar with catching a butterfly and taking it and looking at it very closely and studying it and then letting it go. This person was catching the butterfly and then sticking the pin into its body and pinning it to a cardboard piece of paper. Now, we've certainly seen that done in science class. You find an insect that has died or that has been hurt and is going to die, and you take that insect and you study it and you preserve it on a board or in a glass jar or something like that. But to purposely catch butterflies, not just one but many, and pin them onto a board, killing them, was almost impossible for Roger to believe. He could hardly imagine someone being so cruel. And he says in the next paragraph, how cruel it was to kill something of such beauty. I had walked many times out into the bushes all by myself, just so the butterflies could land on my face and my hands, so I could look at them up close. Something that he cherished, the way that he cherished those butterflies and the beauty of them, was now being treated with such cruelty by an adult who was supposed to be his caregiver, who was supposed to be a person that he could look up to. Think about that, and think about the little ways that children learn from the adults around them, the adults in their lives, not only at home but school and other places, and how children are affected by the actions that adults take, and how children learn both good and bad from the examples of adults in their world. All right, we've gotten to paragraph 5, I guess, 6, okay, and our time is up. I'll stop at 6, and then when we begin next, for next week's lessons with lesson 1, I'll continue to discuss, from my perspective, the meaning in this article. I do want to point out, though, that the meaning that I take from this article may not be the meaning that you take from this article. We all see things differently. We have different background experiences. Our background experiences affect how we understand things, right? How we feel about things. I would just love if we could talk about it. But do enjoy reading it and thinking about it, and we will continue this next time. Until then, stay safe. I'm here if you need me or need anything. Certainly you know how to reach me, and I would be delighted to hear from you anytime, always. Okay.